It's been a wild few weeks and months trying to set everything up, but it's like 25% there. Light. This is a new studio. I am filming a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for my channel members, so if you want to check those out, please do consider joining. Anyways, one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, what Seiko should I buy if I want to get into my first mod? You want to try it out for the first time, but you're not sure which base watch you should pick out for the first project. A lot of people, including myself previously, would have recommended some type of Seiko 5 like the SNK, SNKX, SNX, if such a thing exists. You know, those smaller, non-dive field watches that Seiko produced. And those are still great to start out with. There is not that many parts that make up the watch, so there's less for you to worry about. The only things that you can really change are the movement, dial, hands, and sometimes the crystal. Less parts means less frustrations and a lot lower chance for you to mess something up. Those Seiko 5s are also very affordable, so it's a lot less of a burden if you do by chance mess anything up. But I don't really recommend those Seikos anymore for someone who's trying to do their first mod. This video is titled the best Seiko, not the cheapest Seiko to get for your first mod, or title something along those lines. Normally, I would have recommended the SKX007 or 009 for a first mod, but those have become super expensive, so it's not really worth modding them now as your first build because you can mess it up and it'll be a lot more expensive to cover up. If money is no issue, then yeah, get an SKX007 or 009. But for those who are looking for something a little bit more price friendly, I would recommend the new Seiko 5 SRPD series. These divers were released a few years ago and they're basically the revamped SKX007 009. The SRPD series is a little bit more expensive than the old Seiko 5s, but they are substantially less expensive than the SKX007 or 009. There's tons of models from that line to choose from, and you also get the benefit of being able to use all of the SKX parts that are already manufactured because the parts are interchangeable. Most of the parts purpose for the SKX can be used onto the SRPD. Now before we continue, I want to give a quick thank you to the sponsor of this video, WatchCrunch. WatchCrunch is a platform where enthusiasts like you and me can engage in meaningful discussions about all things horology. Its founders wanted to create a space free of negativity and snobs so that like-minded collectors can feel at home. Whether it's a written post, photo, or video, there's tons of content to view without being distracted by non-watch related topics. Kinda like Facebook or Instagram without those targeted ads, and like any other watch forum, except it doesn't look like something that came out in the early 2000s. Their interface is very intuitive and new features are constantly being added to make the overall user experience more enjoyable. So check out the link below to a post I made on WatchCrunch and feel free to add on to the ongoing discussion. Thanks to WatchCrunch for sponsoring today's video. I'm on there along with other watch YouTubers, so feel free to join in. So why do I recommend the SRPD over the old Seiko 5 watches? Well, you get much more experience by working on these watches. By modding an SRPD, you get the full experience of every single task that's basically involved in Seiko modding. Like I said, the old Seiko 5s are limited to just working on the movement, dial, hands, and sometimes the crystal, which leaves some few parts that you will never be able to experience unless you work on a diver. Namely, the chaptering, the bezel, and the bezel insert, and the crown, because there are a few alternatives. So basically, on a SRPD diver, you get to work on the movement, dial, hands, chaptering, crystal, bezel, bezel insert, case back, crown, a lot more parts than what you get on the Seiko 5 field or non-diver watches. So if you know how to fully mod an SRPD diver, then you are more than capable enough of modding basically any Seiko 5 or Seiko watch that's moddable. Another reason why it's great to start off with an SRPD is because you get to learn how to disassemble the watch. You need to be able to take off existing parts to be able to put on new ones. While disassembling, you get to see where each part belongs, how they fit along with each other, and just how the thing is supposed to be put together, which is especially useful for beginners because once you get to handle the movement, you get to see how the dial is put into place and how the spacing between the hands should be. Of course, Seiko QC isn't the best, but you get to see roughly how things should be put together. Now by chance, if you take it apart and you don't remember where a piece goes or how it fits, I would recommend just filming the process of you taking it apart, or take photos because you want to know where that gasket goes, you want to know where that bezel click spring goes. Just document the process for you to be able to look back on if this is going to be your first build. And aside from just learning more by working on an SRPD diver, you also get a lot more options to choose from because there's like 20 plus Seiko 5 models out there, Seiko 5 divers I mean, so I think it's a lot more fun to work with. And again, you get to reap most of the benefits because most of the SKX parts can be interchanged onto the SRPD diver, and there's like hundreds and hundreds of custom SKX parts manufactured. Now I see this question being asked across various forums, and there's always one response saying like, you should just buy all the parts for a custom build instead of buying a base watch to work on. Basically, you're not buying a watch and modifying it, you're buying all of the mod parts and putting a watch together from scratch. While it may seem like an obvious decision from an experienced builder, imagine being thrown a box of Legos without any instructions, or something from IKEA without a manual. The IKEA reference is a lot more relatable actually. You might not know where each part goes or where this gasket goes, what's supposed to be lubricated, what's not. You also won't be able to practice this assembly. Let's say you want to change out a dial from a watch that you already own, but want to keep the existing handset. Well, to get that dial off, you need to take off the handset as well. And if you don't know how to take off hands without destroying them, you're going to need to find a new set of hands. It's super important to know how to put watches together, but I think it's even more important to know how to take them apart without causing any damage, that is. Now don't get me wrong, it's often going to be a lower price to just buy all the parts instead of buying a base watch, then the mod parts on top of that, like I said in my supercharged SKX video, but I still think it's worth it for beginners to use a stock SRPD for their first mod. Invest a little bit more into your first watch by buying an SRPD base watch instead of just buying parts, and you will pick up all of the tools and skills that you need so that you don't mess up in the future. My first mod was on an SNK807, but at the time they were only like 50 bucks, so I wasn't really too concerned about it. But my next project was on an SKX007, and it was a bit overwhelming because there were so many more parts and the whole thing just fit differently. Had I started on the SKX007, then worked on the SNK, it would have been a breeze and so much more easier. You should think about it as a learning experience, so any type of parts that you break will be an investment for the future. Or if you don't want to deal with any of this headache, then you can just shoot me an email to place an order for a custom watch. I had to put a plug somewhere. Here's a couple of the builds that I've did for previous clients, so shoot me an email if you want to get a commission done. And with that said, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Do follow me on Instagram at loom_shot. Consider becoming a channel member if you really like this type of content. I'll be filming the rest of the renovation and studio setup, and I'll see you guys in the next video. That lamp isn't going to be in here. That desk is supposed to go over here. I don't like the placement of this arm. It's super distracting for the A cam and B cam. There's like no furniture in here, so it's super echoey. A lot of work needs to be done, but this is the best I could do for now.